Sorry, hang on, let me get that PowerPoint back.
Anna, are you going to start us off, or do you want me to?
No, I mean, we certainly can. Hi,
Okay.
Thanks for joining us. We are doing a professional development session on maximizing career brands for our adult students, specifically those in self-designed program, but any students with prior work and education experience would likely find this information very helpful. I'm joined today by Lisa Knapp and Danny Lauer, both from our Career Center and personal branding experts. I'm going to hand it over to both of them. They've got some information to share with us, and then at the end, we will open for questions in case people have anything that they'd like to discuss afterwards. Lisa, whenever you're ready.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Anna. To clarify, I'm not an expert. I just have had a lot of experience and a lot of conversations and worked with a lot of the ad and PR professors when they talk about branding in general. And so those are the pieces of information I'm going to share with you today. There's a lot of great information out there. I would encourage you, if you're reading about personal branding and branding yourself as a professional, that you always kind of check the sources and read broadly, because there's a lot of different things out there, and you will start to identify some themes and trends. And that's what we'll focus on today, are kind of the coming together of the things that are tried and true across the board and endorsed by the ad and PR faculty that I get to work with on the regular basis. So if we can move ahead, we'll talk about what we're going to learn today. What that breaks down to is just very quickly, what is branding? Why is it important to understand what your own personal brand is? How to discover your brand? And we'll do illustrate a couple exercises that you can do on your own, and probably will repeatedly do throughout your career, that will help you identify what your personal brand is and how it's changing and growing and evolving over the course of your studies and then the course of your career. So we can flip it forward. I want you just to, in your head, what's your gut reaction when you see this logo? You can throw it in the chat. Gut reaction. Soda. Yep, just straight up, this is pop. If we were polling the people in my family, some of them would say, oh, yum, oh, Coca-Cola bears. That sounds like a story that somebody has from their past. Yes, my family members, half of them would be like, yes, please, I would like one. And the other half would say, no way, Jose, this does not sound good to me. And so then we would flip to the next screen, and we would have a definite impression here as well. Some of you are like, oh, not so good. Other people are like, yes, 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 please. That is what I would like. These are two brands that most of us are familiar with. And so if we look at these brands, they have been around for a long time. They've gone through several iterations, but you can always recognize that Coca-Cola logo. You can always recognize that Pepsi logo, and you equate an experience and a quality of products that you've probably developed a strong affinity for, one way or another. And that was not done simply with a logo. It was done over time with a lot of tried and true methods and experiences that they give their consumers. So if we flip through, what does this all have to do with us, right? These are brands, and sometimes we confuse logos with brands. When we were getting ready for this, I was sharing with Danny that there was a season where a lot of students were bringing to me their brand. And what they would do is they would come up with something kind of cute or quirky. So maybe they, I don't know, one of them was something with little gummy bears. They had something bearable blogging or something like that. It was called, it was a stretch. Let's just say this. They're playing to the alliteration. It was a stretch. They wanted to use gummy bears as their logo. They wanted to use something that looked like a gummy bear as bullets on their resume. That is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about just making everything look the same. That would be your logo. That might be a brand package, a visual brand package, but a brand is more than your logo. So what is a brand? Right? So there's the Webster's definition. A brand is the sum total of visual, non-visual, verbal, non-verbal, tangible, non-tangible elements that help to identify, form, create, and influence unique and positive associations. So in the way that some of my family members see that Coca-Cola bottle and they grab that first, and others were like, nope, I don't want that no matter what, even if it's the last soda in the fridge. Those are things that come from their experiences with all of these things. They've got unique and positive associations for a product or negative. This can also be for services. It can be for an experience, but it brings to mind something, a profound response. From the ad and PR folks, they will tell you that there are 4 things that are true about all brands. The first thing is that the things you associate with, people, organizations, activities, either help build your brand or work to destroy it. So even if you've never said, my brand is this, when you are working with somebody or you're interacting with a brand, something is either building it up or tearing it down. And so you get to decide, do I want to do some things that will help build it up so other people aren't tearing it down, right? So every interaction somebody has with you, with a brand, is either building it or taking away from it. Brands exist in the mental impressions other people have about you. So what do people say when you're not in the room? What are people saying about Coca-Cola? What are people saying about Pepsi-Cola, right? That would be part of that mental impression that people have of those brands. That's why those logos elicit responses. Maybe when you have a faculty member or a speaker walk into the room, you're like, yes, I love them. Or maybe you're like, oh, wow, get ready to sit into the seat and listen for a while, right? You know what the experience is going to be like if you've had experiences with them over time. Strong brands must be authentic, clear about what they are and what they are not. That's something that works really directly to our personal career brands. And then how your brand makes others feel about themselves also impacts how they feel about your brand, right? So Danny, I'm not going to necessarily call you out, but you put Coca-Cola bears. Is that what it said? Cocoa bears? Yeah. So clearly there's some feeling associated with that from a experience with your family, I'm guessing. And that not only makes you feel good about the product, but it probably makes you feel good about that time in your life or about those experiences that you do that. So your brand is working both ways. So how does this all work together when we're creating our personal career brand? So here's the good news. Your personal career brand is probably already forming. Remember that first, the things you associate with either are building or destroying your brand. Probably that's already happening. And I'm guessing it's all building your brand, right? It's all good stuff that you're putting out in the world as you're studying and working to further your education, as maybe you're in the workplace developing new skills, as you're bettering yourself in some way or another. Maybe you're learning how to interact with people in new and different ways. And so that's all building your brand, even if you're not intentionally doing it. So if we flip it around, so we're going to talk about, I think there are 3 steps kind of to get our head around how to think about our brand and then how to leverage it as part of our networking and our career development process and even our internship or job search. So getting started, what you know, what you've done, and who you are. The first thing we're going to do is a skills inventory. So if you are watching this later, you can even stop the video and take a minute with a piece of paper. If you are here now, you can kind of make some bullet points on your page. But I want you to think about, if we flip it forward a screen, employers are looking to learn your technical skills and your soft skills. And so technical skills Might be things like Google certifications. Maybe you've worked with a customer relationship management system. Maybe you have technical skills like CPR or curriculum design, but there are technical things you know how to do, certain kinds of writing. Some of these will have come from life experiences. Some of these will come from previous work experiences. Maybe it's a hobby that you've just pursued and developed on your own. But you have a set of technical skills that can be used and connected to a workplace. Then you also have a set of soft skills. So if we're thinking about lead students in particular, right, you're lifelong learners. You've been studying and working through curriculum, through classes at an accelerated rate. So not only lifelong learners, but lifelong learners capable of learning large amounts of content in short amount of time and assimilating that content into the next set of things that you're learning. I mean, it's kind of remarkable what you're doing. So that is a soft skill that you would want to talk about and you would want to identify and connect to the next place that you want to go. That is part of your personal career brand. Adaptable, maybe you have conflict resolution skills that you could talk about. That can be technical, but it also can be one of those soft skills that you bring to the table. Problem solving. Integrity is a soft skill that employers are looking for. Will you do what you say you'll do? Works well under pressure. So these are all technical soft skills. It's taking a minute. We think that we know ourselves, but often we sell ourselves short. So take a minute and just jot those down. What are the technical skills I have? What are the soft skills? And you may walk away from that first jotting session and through the course of a week say, oh, wait a second, this is a technical skill I hadn't even thought of, or this is a soft skill. Everybody always tells me I'm so fill in the blank, right? That's people are telling you, you know, that's what they say about you when they're not in the room. They may be saying that to you as well. So that would be something that we would work into that skills list. And then once we've done our skills inventory, we're going to flip the screen and we're going to think about our educational experiences and our work and life experiences. And go ahead and catalog those in two different places, right? Maybe you've earned a couple different degrees. Maybe you have some certifications. Again, that might be part of your technical skills, but it might be something that you're certified in. Maybe part of your educational experience was an internship in a particular industry. And so you leave with knowledge bases related to that industry, but also maybe some technical skills related to the job you did, and also maybe some soft skills that were enhanced and developed as you worked with those peers and supervisors that you hadn't ever really noticed before. So take a catalog of your educational experiences, take a catalog of work and life, right? Maybe you've been a server in a 5-star restaurant. That speaks to a high level of service. It speaks to excellence. Maybe you've been a server for 15 years at Bob Evans. We had a student one time get hired because she left that on her resume. She wanted to take it off. Several people said to take it off. I said, you have the space. Why don't you leave it on? And the employer said, you could go so many places and make more money. Tell me why you did it. Why did you stay there? And she's like, I'm loyal. They needed me. My customers, I knew them. I really enjoyed that work setting. So don't discount some of those experiences you've had, especially those that you were a part of for a long time. Maybe you were the primary caregiver for 5 children during a season of your life. That speaks to who you are and the nature of what you were doing. And maybe during that time you were doing part-time jobs that each added to your soft skill or your technical skill set that you're bringing forward. So again, take a catalog, get all these things down, and then that's going to help you start to develop your story, which is part of your personal brand, your personal career brand. So if we flip to the second step is really then talking about our majors, right? So especially in leads, especially in integrative studies, sometimes our temptation is to walk up to an employer and say, hi, I'm a lead student, or I'm an integrative studies student. And the employer kind of blanks out because they don't have a frame of reference. They're not really sure what we're talking about. And so our job is to tell them why that matters, because that's the question they're asking. Why does it matter that Lisa wants to work for my organization? How could she support the work that we do? How could she contribute? So it's my job to share with them why that matters. And so a few questions to ask yourself, right? If we flip forward, the first question, does the name of my degree matter to employers? Degrees matter. And employers, if they're given a list, will check the degrees they know. But if you ask them who is working in their organization and what degree they have, they probably don't know. I have a panel today with employers, 10 different employers, and it's a panel for communications in the arts. And our employers, our professional people on that panel, I did look up their majors because for this kind of thing, it is important. But we had a lead student in that panel. We have somebody who was a video production student from years ago on that panel. We have somebody whose degree is in something really specific medical. One of the radiation or ultrasound. No communications degree at all in the communications in the arts field. We have somebody who is working in illustration who just taught themselves to draw and then just got better and had more experiences across the board. So I am not saying your degree doesn't matter, your degree matters. And what you've been studying matters, but the name of your degree probably doesn't matter in the way that a lot of people think that it should. Like if I say this degree, they're going to think of this job. So that's one thing to ask yourself. Does the name of my degree matter? And then the next thing, ask yourself, how have I been preparing to do or for what I want to do next? So take my communications panelist, for instance, as a LEADS program member, did some things around communication, took the team building class, took the leadership class, probably had an interpersonal class in the mix. And that allowed them to go forward into the communications field. Had a background where they did a lot of work with people that played into how they prepared to do a role in the communications field. So when you're thinking about this question for yourself, think a little bit about where you want to go, think a little bit about what you've been doing to get ready for that. That is part of your career brand. And so a phrase, well, and then the third question, yes, thank you for flipping that, is what role did my major have in that preparation? And so that becomes how you talk about your major. For the last several years, I have been preparing for this job through these experiences and studying these things. Or you're in front of an employer and they say, tell me a little bit about yourself, instead of saying, I'm a LEADS, I'm a Grand Valley student who is graduating with a degree in integrative studies, leadership. Maybe starting with recently, I returned to school, and for the last 2 years, I have been completing a degree that is focused on leadership and focused on interpersonal skills and community development and problem solving. And that lines up so well with some of my early experiences in the medical field or wherever those early experiences might have been. And that is why I'm excited to talk to you today, because when I'm reading through your job description, those pieces are all there: interpersonal skills, leadership, customer service. And so I am excited for this conversation we're about to have, right? Then you're weaving it in. You're weaving it into those skills. You're weaving it into those experiences. It's one part and one piece of how you prepared. And then kind of the last thing, well, second to the last thing, discover your brand. This is questions to start asking yourself. And this goes back to kind of those 4 true things, right? And again, if you're watching this, this would be a good place to like click it off. We're going to forward the screen and you could sit with these questions to ask yourself. How do other people describe me? Who do you want to work for? What makes you different from others who have a similar education? That's where some of your extra skill sets, soft, technical skills come in. That's where some of those early experiences that you may have had, or even the act of starting school, leaving school, living life for a little while, coming back to school, that might be part of what makes you different from somebody with a similar education. What are your passions and purposes? A lot of employers will hire somebody who's really excited about the leadership course that they have and can apply it into workplaces or internships and talk about that experience. What are your values? What are your core strengths and weaknesses? How do you want to be perceived? How do other people, I want people to feel like I believe in them. I want people to feel like we can make things work out, right? Problem solving, that we can be adaptable and flexible. How do you want people to feel when they're around you? Or what do you want them to think about you? How do you want to be perceived as somebody who is always on time, reliable, dependable, or somebody who can go with the flow, adaptable, flexible, right? Those are both good things. They just work out differently in different places. And so having a good sense of who you are and what you bring to the table is a great way to stand out in resumes and cover letters. It's a great way to stand out in professional conversations. It's a great way to stand out in interviews because you're not trying to give them the right answer. You're trying to tell them who you are and how you perceive that you connect to the role that you're interviewing for, or that you're trying to move on to. So those would be some good reflection questions to come back to later. And then we can apply those 4 truths of your career brand. Once you've sat with that and you kind of have in your mind, what do I want people to say about me? Who do I want to be? Then you can kind of run through, what am I doing that either is building that or destroying that? So if I want people to see me as reliable and dependable and trustworthy, am I doing things that are reliable, dependable, and trustworthy in all areas of my interactions with others, in career and personal spaces and places, because you don't know where those two will overlap. What do people say about me when I'm not in the room? Do they say, wow, Lisa will show up? I remember one time I was coming in late for an event, and one of the students was getting very anxious, and she started to send me a text. And one of my colleagues from another department said, don't text Lisa, she'll be here. She said she'll be here. She's going to probably fly right in under the radar, but I know she'll be here. And that'll probably make her nervous if you send her a text. And it wouldn't have made me nervous. I would have said, yep, on my way. But the fact that he could speak to that for me meant a lot to me, right? That he could trust me, and that he would say that truth about me. So what do you want people to say? How do you clearly state who you are and who you are not authentically, right? So if you want somebody who is managing all the details of your organization, I am probably not the person to hire. And I can manage details. I do details fine, but that is not my strength. I can bring other things to your team that are just as important. They're just different. And so if you know what you're bringing to the team, you will not be as likely to find yourself in spots that aren't a good fit. That's kind of, the brand is really about your reputation, but then also about finding work where you contribute and play to your strengths. We had an employer one time who said, stop worrying about your weaknesses, work to develop and grow and become better, but focus on your strengths, throw fire on those bad boys. So you got a bonfire everywhere you go. And they'll see that you're working for self-improvement, but they'll be really impressed with what you're bringing to the table. And it's all right to bring 1 or 2 things to the table. You don't have to be everything to everybody, even if that's the way you've been feeling for a while now, as a grown-up, right? That's what happens to us. So you don't have to do that in the workplace. Think about who you are and how you want to talk about that. And then how does my brand make other people feel about themselves? So how does working with me make other people feel? How does being around me make other people feel? How does the outcome of my work make other people feel, right? If I'm doing process improvement, has that process really improved things? I was talking with a student recently who was describing a process that they fixed. They had a way that they reported a medical process. And he said, we fixed one problem, but we made a bigger problem. And we had to go back and try to fix that too, right? Because everybody was mad at me and I just didn't like that. I didn't like that everybody would see me and feel cranky, right? So he went back, followed up and fixed it down the line. So applying those truths to your personal brand, and then it's putting it all together. This is really the final stage. So when we put it all together, this is like making your brand work for you. right? So we hear all these things. It's nice to sit and reflect. That's where we kind of get our materials. But then how do we put it together so that it's not like a gummy bear or a teacup because we're creative, right? You are your own brand. This is your reputation. This is you get to manage this through your actions, through your behaviors. If we went back to that first slide with the definition, it's the nonverbal and verbal, tangible and intangible things. All of that together is your brand. So if you flip it forward one more time, you can take a look, right? Reputation. This is really what your career brand is. And how you build that reputation is knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, and then doing the things that reinforce that all the time versus doing things that break it down. So I think it can be used. There will be visual things. There will be cover letters and resumes and business cards. You may have a blog or a website or a portfolio. All of those things should be on brand. They should show who you are. They should be cohesive. But more important are the behaviors, who you are and how you interact with the people around you. And then telling that story to professionals and employers. And so just to kind of wrap it up, and this is kind of tricky, there's just the four of us here, but what are the first steps that you would take towards building your brand? Even though you know that you've already been building your brand just by nature of who you are and things you've been recently doing. But now that you have kind of a more comprehensive look at it, what would be a couple things you would do to get started? And again, you can put it in the chat. Look at a resume and LinkedIn and compare it to the things that I wrote down today. That's a great first step, right? Because we build profiles, we build resumes, and often we don't think about what our strengths, who we are. We try to just kind of list experiences or list the things we think that the employers want to see. And you do tailor from your experiences, of course, but you want things to be cohesive and look similar and share a similar message, maybe in a little different way. Other things that you might do to get started. Maybe just watching this webinar is the get started, right? Just sitting and thinking about it for the first time ever, and then spending a little bit of time over time to do some of these exercises, the taking the skills inventory, to think about how you talk about your major and what you want that response to be. What parts of your major really prepared you for what you want to do next, and just amplify those, throw fire on those even, so that you have a bonfire to highlight those things. Yeah. Reflect on how people think about you and how you want them to think about you. Good. And then the second question, now are you feeling more comfortable describing your major to employers? Why or why not? Well, I hope the answer is yes. But if the answer is not yes, that's a good time to come in and meet with somebody in the Career Center. So I serve as the LEADS Career Advisor, but my colleague Danny, who is here, Danny Lauer, also has great experience with these things. And even Anna has great experiences with these things as well, and could talk you through ways that you might talk to about your major specific to you when you're talking to others and to employers. So that is something that you can do a deeper dive. You can practice. You can do it in the context of looking at your skills and experiences. So I encourage you, if the answer to that is not yes, then get in front of one of us so that we can practice with you on an individual basis. And then the last question is, what questions do you still have? And what resources do you wish you had? And again, this is where, if you're watching this later, please send Danny or myself or Anna a message, an email, and say, you know, I watched that webinar. I get the big picture, but I'm having difficulty. I really wish I knew more about this or more about that. Or I would have liked to been in the webinar interactive, but I couldn't be. And so here would be better ways for me to have interactive opportunities. We want that feedback. We're craving that feedback. We are here to support your career development, to support the development of your career brand. And we want to make sure that it is the best representation of who you are possible. So I think that that's what we have for today, unless Anna and Danny want to add anything.
I've got one thought to share. So when Lisa was giving this presentation, one thing that was kind of a thread throughout it is that, you know, there kind of is a feedback component to this, that, you know, people who have worked with us, people who have taught us classes, you know, can really give us information that helps us put the pieces together and say, wow, I can consistently demonstrate these skills in multiple areas and those sorts of things. So my thought was just to remind people that every single GV faculty member and staff member have the potential to be a resource. You know, Lisa and Danny might have a deeper, you know, sort of knowledge of this. They might be able to talk about it a little bit more comprehensively, but I just wanted to remind you that, you know, if you take a class that's really interesting, that faculty member would probably love to connect, and those sessions can really contribute to an open, I mean, I can think of so many things that I didn't even know were possibilities until I talked to people about it. So, I mean, that's just my takeaway. Just because someone, you know, is a faculty member or they do something different, if they're connected to you, if they've had experiences with you, they can be a part of helping you build this brand, even if maybe they don't even realize it, because it's just a collection of conversations and knowing yourself better and knowing your skills better.
Right. 100%. Thank you for that. Yeah. If there are no other questions or comments, then I thank you all for being here. And I hope that you found this material helpful. And I hope that you stay connected with the Career Center in ways that are also helpful and encouraging. So thank you.